It's interesting, sometimes I notice that Flavio is desperate. But it seems like Eduardo is even more. Yeah, right? Yeah. Andrea Gonçalves, do you think it's because his trial is already set? The trial is scheduled for the 16th. Eduardo Bolsonaro's trial before the first chamber of the Federal Supreme Court on the charge of coercion in the course of legal proceedings. Where, by the way, the Prosecutor General's office still has to state its position. Alexandre de Moraes ordered the Prosecutor General's office to state its position. Whether Eduardo Flávio Bolsonaro and Bolsonaro should be added to this case. What a supervening fact has appeared, a new fact. What is it, Andrea Gonçalves? The source of funding for Eduardo Bolsonaro, which, according to the federal police, by all indications, is exactly this money from Daniel Vorcaro, which was supposed to go to the film. And so far, there is no proof that it actually went to the film. The money went to the fund, Harvey Gates, whose manager is the lawyer of Eduardo Bolsonaro. And maybe that explains the luxurious lifestyle Eduardo Bolsonaro is living in the United States. What, money doesn't grow on trees? No. And Eduardo Bolsonaro left his position as a federal deputy in February last year when he was earning almost 50,000 reais. Then you might say, no, Andrea, but Bolsonaro sent him 2 million so he could live in the United States. 2 million turns into $400,000, which is enough to pay for a year and a half of rent at the house where Eduardo Bolsonaro lives. In other words, 2 million is practically nothing for Eduardo Bolsonaro's wealthy standard of living in the United States. In other words, there is another source of funding, and the suspicion of the federal police is that the money that should have gone to the movie didn't go to the movie, especially since it hasn't happened until now. It went to the fund of Eduardo Bolsonaro's lawyer, and very possibly it's bankrolling him. And with this new fact, a request was made to include Flávio Bolsonaro and Bolsonaro in this police investigation that's already in the procedural phase. And that will be the final trial of Eduardo Bolsonaro on June 16th. What's happening? Eduardo Bolsonaro, my dear, has committed several crimes. It seems that Eduardo went abroad to receive the money, and Flavio stayed to receive the money and collect the money. Flávio Bolsonaro collected the money from Daniel Vorcaro, and the money went to the United States to Eduardo Bolsonaro. Just the house where Eduardo Bolsonaro lives costs 6 million reais. He said that the house isn't his. He said that he pays rent. The rent for the house is 30,000 reais per month. One person, and he quit his job. He went to the United States, and he's paying 30,000 reais in rent. That's 30,000 reais. And it's interesting that the house isn't in May. The house isn't in Miami. The house is in Texas, where the fund is, where Eduardo Bolsonaro's lawyer is, and where the money went in Texas. Too much of a coincidence? Or could it be the result of a criminal organization that planned everything in advance? Look, Eduardo, we're going to get a lot of money, Flavio said, and I was speculating in my head. We're going to get a lot of money, it's millions, and it can't stay here in Brazil. Go to the United States, go there to attack the Supreme Court, attack, make Zetelo say that you're a hero, that you made a sacrifice because he said he made a sacrifice. Eduardo Bolsonaro even recorded a video that I showed you last week of him in a room with an inflatable mattress right after he arrived in the United States, saying that he was living there and that he made a sacrifice in the name of democracy and for justice that fights against the dictatorship in robes and the dictatorship that is in Brazil, that he made a sacrifice. Then suddenly we find out that there apparently he went to receive millions from Daniel Vorcaro. And I ask you again, if everything was honest, legal, upright, and moral, why did they do everything in secret, and why did they send the money to the account of Eduardo Bolsonaro's lawyer in the United States? Why all the secrecy? since Flávio Bolsonaro didn't even know Daniel Borcaro, and suddenly he was demanding millions from him because he had already received more than 60 million. And now we found out that there were even meetings where Flavio went to Daniel Borcaro's house. And there's at least a video I know there is of one of the meetings. I'm hoping there's audio too. If there's audio, do you know what we'll see? Flavio Bolsonaro, dog, little dog, they like to say that, right? About the federal police, Alexandre de Moraes' lapdog, and so on. That's right. We're going to see Flavio Bolsonaro like a dog licking Daniel Borcaro's boots at his house, looking for millions of reais. I'm really hoping there's audio or video. Video. Then we'll really know who this group of criminals and lackeys are. Ayos. And this won't stand. And the truth will come out. Let's see another statement from my dear Leonel Rad, always very, and no. Shall we watch Eduardo's video? Using the article from Revista Oeste to say they're innocent, poor thing. Soon he'll be a fugitive, on the run, and with his name on Interpol's list, Eduardo Bolsonaro. Look here, my dear, pay attention. Revista Oeste isn't a basis for anything except paid for nonsense.
The lawyer rules out any irregularities in Dark Horse. The negotiation with Flávio Bolsonaro didn't involve any quid pro quo and was above board. In other words,
they went to sell to Opa. Hold on a second. From Dudu Bananinha, who said that? Revista Oeste, which is pro-Bolsonaro and keeps saying things that aren't true. They're unreliable. You didn't see that anywhere else. Only in Revista Oeste, which turned into nonsense with Eduardo Bolsonaro, and Eduardo Bolsonaro is spreading that nonsense around. With this story here that Daniel Volcario cleared Flavio Bolsonaro, did he really clear him? Because actually, if you clear Flavio Bolsonaro, who are you really clearing? Dudu Bananinha? Not for the part about coercion during the process, because for that, he's already going to be convicted. He'll get almost 9 years in prison. But for the part about financing and embezzling the movie's money. And even if he says whatever he wants, Daniel Volcario, the federal police will ask him some questions. For example, they're already doing that this week. You are a multimillionaire. In his case, you are a billionaire. You're going to take 60 million, more than 60 million, and you're going to invest it in a movie. Let me ask you something here. If you're going to transfer that money, which account are you going to transfer it to? It's just like a real estate contract. When will you sell the property? For the bank to accept this sale, the financing and all that from the other person, the money that the bank will transfer from the financing, the money only goes to the owner of the property. Isn't that right? The bank doesn't give money to third parties. Look, bank, I owe someone else. Can you transfer the money to that other person? The bank says, no, you are the owner of the property. You are the one selling the property. The money can only go into your account since you are the holder. After the money is in your account, then you can do whatever you want with it. But the contract, everything is done properly through the bank. It has to be done this way. That's how it is. So Banco Master, pay attention to this. Banco Master is going to invest in the movie. And Banco Master is going to transfer more than 60 million to an account that doesn't belong to the movie. My dears, for heaven's sake, people, anytime money comes out of a bank, it's a bureaucratic nightmare. Because this is a financing relationship, a contract, an investment from the bank for the film. And I was going to ask Daniel Borcaro, let me tell you something. And to which account did you transfer this money? If you made an investment contract for a film, you have to transfer the money to the film's account. Did you transfer the money to the account in the United States? How does that work? Explain to me how that works. How do you make a deal like that? What's the logic behind that? There's no logic within the banking system for a situation like that. There isn't, guys. So there's no point in trying to say everything was proper and above board. There's no way. And those who know, who understand a bit about banks, how contracts with banks work, know how it is, right? How annoying it is. So there's no way there is. And we're not talking about 1,000 raise, 2,000 raise, 5,000 raise, which already exists. From 3,000 raise on, it's already a terrible bureaucracy. We're talking about more than 60 million reais in a contract that listed a total of 134 million reais. But do you know why there was this gravy train? Because the money wasn't theirs. It was public money. The money was stolen from retirees, from shareholders, from public servants, from their own private pension fund, from their own pension funds, where public servants like those from Rio de Janeiro were harmed and invested in Banco Master. It's public money from BRB. BRB is bankrupt. There's even a session today at the Legislative Assembly of the Federal District where they're going to try to get a 7 billion reais loan to save BRB. And guess who's going to pay for that loan? You and I. It's public money that was stolen from BRB, which is a public bank linked to the government of the Federal District, Ibanez Rocha, who tucked his tail between his legs. And he's already campaigning for the Senate, and soon he'll become a senator, even though he caused a deficit of more than 12 billion reais in public money. That's why they did everything their way. One big free-for-all, because the money wasn't theirs. The money was public, stolen. Then they'd send money over there and pay a monthly allowance here. Look, I'll put this much public money there. You give me back this much. Okay. It's the big kickback scheme, the big monthly payoff scheme. Then they come and say, Revista Oeste said he was acquitted. Give me a break. Pay attention to something I'm about to tell you about the evidence. With the evidence that the federal police already have, there's no way to acquit them. Then you're going to say, Andrea Gonçalves, yeah, but like Andrea Gonçalves, okay, let's suppose that there really wasn't any corruption. In the matter of the contract, there was a financial crime. If there wasn't corruption, strictly speaking, in the contract and the money, there were financial crimes in this transfer to the United States. That's why I say there's no way to acquit. They're not fools, idiots. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, no, it was in good faith. There wasn't a single innocent person there. There wasn't any. We're talking about bankers. We're talking about senators. We're talking about federal deputies, former federal deputies. They knew very well what the procedure was, what had to be followed. From the withdrawal of the money to the transfer of the money for this investment. That's all. There's no way. That's it. Reason those triumphs that unless there's a backroom deal. If there's a backroom deal, it's to acquit Flávio and whoever else is involved in the scam. In Daniel Vocaro's mafia, I just don't believe there will be. Mainly due to the federal police's work, which will come to light. There's no way. Let's watch another statement, my beautiful and handsome. Go ahead and hit that button, share it. Like and comment. That's really important. This one was already censored, Bolsonaro. This one was already taken down, wasn't it, guys?
Another act of censorship by Flávio Bolsonaro's team. The coordinator of your campaign, Senator Rogério Marinho, is now shamelessly trying to censor us from talking about their 7 days on, 0 days off proposal in the Senate. Senator, here's a challenge for you. You who were exposed by me many times in the NSS Inquiry Committee, what was the lie that we told? It's right here in your video. You exposed yourself, clearly saying that you presented a proposal where the person could choose how many hours to work. You even mentioned 50 hours.
If you want to work 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours, 50 hours, it's possible. It's possible.
You presented the 7 days on, 0 days off shift proposal with unlimited working hours daily, and now you want to censor us so we can't talk about it. Here's the challenge. Tell me where we lied. Speak clearly about your statement. Refute yourself as you said here in this video. It's censorship. Do you know why? Because you are afraid of the people. Because the people clearly and urgently want to end the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule and reduce the working hours. Stop lying and let's work for our people.
Yes, they presented another constitutional amendment and amendments in the Senate to try to hinder the approval of the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule, which has already been approved in the Chamber of Deputies. Rogerio Correa is actually going there now and made a video to talk about this situation regarding the end of the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule. Pay attention here, heading to Brasilia. Let's see here.
Heading to Brasilia, and the topic I'm bringing to you is the end of the 6 on 1 off work schedule. It's stuck in the Senate. The proposal we approved in the chamber for the 5 on 2 off work schedule needs to move forward there. But we're facing censorship. Hey, Congressman, what does one thing have to do with the other? It's because the leader of the Liberal Party, Senator Rogerio Marinho, coordinator of Flávio Bolsonaro's program, filed a request for censorship against deputies with the Attorney General's office. Me, Lindbergh Faria, Erica Hilton, and also Minister Bulos and Alencar Santana. What do they want? To forbid us from denouncing the 7 on 0 off work schedule that they initiated. Look, the coordinator of Flávio's program, signed by Flávio, also signed by Carlos Viana and Cleitinha here in Minas, which establishes the 7 by 0 work schedule. According to them, the worker could have the freedom to choose their work schedule, and it could reach up to 50 hours according to him. So it's 7 by 0. We're telling the truth. They want to persuade workers to accept negotiating a work schedule with employers that's different from what's in the law. And labor legislation that's different from what's in the law. According to them, what's negotiated will have more value. This is the super exploitation of workers, which could lead to work weeks of up to 52 hours. That's what is established and what Senator Rogerio Marinho himself says. Of course, we can't allow that. So they're trying to censor us. In fact, censorship has become their weapon, right? You saw Flavio Bolsonaro now trying to censor. A poll showed that he dropped and is way down there. And look, I'll tell you guys, this week there are 3 cases against me in the Ethics Council. There's a case against Lindbergh and also against Congresswoman Erica Hilton. And what's more, there are 3 lawsuits against me in court. 2 from Flávio Bolsonaro and Jair Bolsonaro. Do you know why? I linked them to Vocaro and the mansions. I lied, folks. These people never run short on censorship. Stay sharp. And let's go to the Senate to put pressure so that ending the 6 on 1 off schedule gets on the agenda and removing the 7 on 0 off schedule from the agenda. Big hug.
Yeah, those Bolsonaro supporters, they're such idiots, aren't they, guys? They want to implement in Brazil the system from the United States, which is by hours worked. But there's a big difference in the United States. There's a shortage of labor, especially for the jobs that Americans don't want to do. Construction, working in malls, all those kinds of jobs, there's a shortage of labor there. That's why that system works there, that hourly wage scheme, you know? Now in Brazil, we have an excess of labor. So this scheme they're trying to impose here in Brazil, which is the 7 on 0 off schedule, you can label it 7 by 0. It's not like this. You show up to work, you go to work. If the boss wants, the boss will say, right? Then they say it's negotiated, that you can negotiate with the boss here in Brazil. If you try to speak up, you lose your job. And there's a huge line of people wanting your position. That's why it doesn't work here in Brazil, you know? Then you show up to work and the boss says, no, I don't need you today, so you won't get paid. Then another day, the boss says, you can stay and work 2 hours. I don't need you after that. Do you understand? They live in an Alice in Wonderland world. They act like we're living in the United States, you know? Where labor is scarce, where you can find a job and work by the hour. You work at one place, then another, and another. Here you can barely work properly. That's why you need Brazil's labor code here, So your rights are guaranteed. Because that's the kind they want. If the boss needs you 7 days a week, you'll have to work all 7 days. If the boss doesn't need you, then not even 1 day a week. You won't have a set work day or a set paycheck because you'll be paid by the hour and you won't have any rights at all. So they live in Bob's fantasy world trying to impose a terrible situation on the workers here. And there are foolish workers who don't understand this and say, no, but this is good. Make this deal with your boss. You'll see on the days there's demand, you'll work, and on the days there isn't. He says, go home so he doesn't have to pay you. Stop being naive. Stop being foolish. You're not in the United States where there's a labor shortage. Here in Brazil, there's an excess of labor. If you don't want your job where you have all the protections of Brazil's labor code, don't worry. Leave because there's a long line of people wanting to take your spot. Have some patience, people, these lazy people, these people who still spread disinformation. It's not free negotiation. I want to see you there negotiating with your boss. Go negotiate with him and see what happens to you. And they don't want us to talk. No, they don't want us to say what they're trying to do. They don't want to put it out there. A schedule of 52 hours a week, it's negotiated. Most won't even have 52 hours, maybe not even 6 hours, 12 hours a week worked. You'll just be used and then discarded without any rights. That's what they want. Why? Because that's wonderful for the boss. Look, today there's demand. Come here, come work. No, today there isn't. No, you can go. Leave. I'll pay you today. No, you can go. That's the negotiation. People look ridiculous, guys. Meanwhile, Davi Alcolumbre is dragging his feet on ending the 6 days on, 1 day off work schedule under pressure. Alcolumbre is supposed to meet with leaders to decide the future of the proposed constitutional amendment in the Senate. Davi Alcolumbre, as I explained to you, won't have to run for re-election. He is guaranteed another 4 years in office, so he's not really worried. He's holding up the public security constitutional amendment proposal. He's holding up a lot of things. Of course, he wants to trade favors with the government to move things forward. But in this situation, 2/3 of the senators will run for re-election now in October, the first Sunday of October, the second round, right, for the executive, the last Sunday of October. That's in the federal constitution. So these 2/3 who need re-election are pushing hard for Davi Alcolumbre to move things forward. They want to approve it. It's a measure that, according to the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, more than 80% of the population supports, so they need to approve it. And Davi Alcolumbre is acting all high and mighty because he still has 4 more years in his term and doesn't need to run in the next election. Now, since senators have 8-year terms, their seats are secure. It's a shame, guys. Even Senator Humberto Costa made a complaint. Now, let's see. He spoke here, Senator Humberto Costa, about what is happening or what should be happening and isn't in the Senate. Let's see what he says here.
After a lot of struggle, we managed to approve in the House of Representatives the end of the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule. And when we were calm, thinking that the process in the Senate would be quick, then the far right appears with a proposal from Senator Rogério Marinho, who actually doesn't want to end the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule. He wants to implement the 7-day, no days off schedule. With this proposal, workers will arrange their work schedule with each employer. There will be no requirement to pay the minimum wage. You may earn less than the minimum wage, and your working hours will be defined by an agreement through negotiation with your employer. Now, look, even with an organized union fighting collectively, it's hard to impose the worker's will on the employer. Imagine each worker negotiating directly with the employer. This is a proposal to finish crushing Brazilian workers. But we will fight, we will prevent this attempt by the President of the Senate to delay the vote on ending the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule. And with your participation, with your pressure on social media, in the streets anyway, we will manage to get this proposal approved.
And here's the detail, Who is the author of this proposal? That needs to be made very clear. The author of this proposal is Senator Rogério Marinho from the PL party. He is the leader of the PL in the federal Senate, and he is responsible for Flávio Bolsonaro's election campaign. Flávio Bolsonaro is just more of the same and very little of what these people want and what Bolsonaro tried to do. We have to remember Bolsonaro spent 4 years in office without giving a real increase to the minimum wage. Bolsonaro spent 4 years in office without updating the income tax table so that those who earned less than 2 minimum wages in 2022 were paying income tax. Bolsonaro is the one who introduced several provisional measures to end the 13th month salary and the 1/3 vacation bonus, the so-called green and yellow work card. That was the situation. And this green and yellow card was not approved in the National Congress because it was terrible for workers. And the federal Senate itself shelved Bolsonaro's provisional measures. So Bolsonaro is a setback for workers. Flávio Bolsonaro is the same. He's his father's son, pure blood. And what about this? If he could, he would come back with a whip in hand to lash the workers' backs. It was the resistance that didn't accept it and didn't let it happen. But they are the same. It's the same group. It's the same old Bolsonaro as always, and he won't be elected. And yes, and all this fear about this Atlas Intel poll, like I told you, has a reason. It's because Lula, with 3 more percentage points in the vote, wins in the first round. And that's why this poll here was censored by Nunes Marx. In this poll, Lula, with 47% of voting intentions plus 3 percentage points, Lula wins in the first round. That's why they're censoring this poll. And we're showing and making it clear that at this rate, Lula is going to win in the first round, and that's what's bothering them. And when Nunes Marx censors this here, the effect is the opposite. That's when everyone is going to show it. That's when everyone is going to talk about it. And today, the TSC, the ministers of the Superior Electoral Court, a total of 7, will decide whether Nunes Marx is right or not. Here's the thing about this censorship. The audio that led to Flávio Bolsonaro's downfall is real, so there shouldn't be any censorship. Think about it. When the video came out of Flávio Bolsonaro licking Daniel Borcaro's boots, which is basically saying that there won't be any electoral polling allowed. For a fact that is true, that's not right, that's censorship. If the fact were improper, false, fake news, then okay, there should be censorship. Censorship, yes, would be constitutional, legal censorship. But since the fact that led to Flávio's downfall and decline, which is constant today, is true, it's a fact. So it can't be used as grounds for any kind of censorship, including by the Superior Electoral Court. We have to be very careful with these shielding moves by Andre Mendonça and the censorship by Nunes. Marx at the Superior Electoral Court and soon Andre Mendonça there as well. He is also the Vice President of the Superior Electoral Court, Andre Mendonça, and he is the rapporteur for this situation in the master case. And I've already heard that the federal police will not accept Daniel Borcaro's plea bargain. Why, Andre? Because the federal police have the evidence in a certain direction, showing something, and Daniel Borcaro is withholding information. And when you make a plea bargain proposal, a plea agreement, you have the duty to tell the truth. You can't withhold information and you can't lie. Daniel Borcaro, this is his last chance this week. Either he spills the beans and what he says lines up with the evidence the police already have, or the police won't accept it. Obviously, the fundamental factor for accepting or not accepting a plea bargain isn't even up to the federal police itself. It's up to the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General has to respond. In the end, if he doesn't respond, all of this could turn into a big agreement behind the scenes. The role of the Attorney General will be fundamental. In fact, we are still waiting for his statement about whether or not to include Flávio Bolsonaro and Bolsonaro himself in the investigation that is already in its final stage and will convict Eduardo Bolsonaro for coercion during the proceedings, in which these individuals now appear as a new fact as the financiers of Eduardo Bolsonaro's crime. Eduardo Bolsonaro has a trial scheduled for the 16th where he will be convicted, and I believe unanimously, by the first panel of the Supreme Federal Court, and he will get almost 9 years in prison. Soon he will be declared a fugitive. His arrest will be ordered, and it will be established that he is a fugitive. He will be put on Interpol's red notice list, and he will apply to the coup government for political asylum. From Donald Tranquera, the owner of Tranquera. And very possibly he will have a certain level of protection, just like Alexandre Ramagem is having right now. And why is that? Very possibly they passed confidential information to the United States. Alexandre Ramagem, former general director of the Brazilian intelligence agency, who has access to national security information and state secrets. Where Flávio Bolsonaro himself in a video says that he sent a report to the United States government with secret information. That is treason. Oh. If they were convicted in the United States, that would mean a firing squad, the electric chair, treason. And in the federal constitution, the only situation that allows the death penalty is in the case of declared war, especially in the case of traitors to the country. And these people are acting like traitors to the country. There is no forgiveness, there shouldn't be any deals, and this career in crime must be brought to an end. From all indications, especially from Flávio Bolsonaro and Eduardo Bolsonaro, and how will it stop, Andrea? By having the necessary deterrent effect. Because a good criminal is not a dead criminal. That's just nonsense from Bolsonaro supporters. A good criminal is a rehabilitated criminal, and for that, he needs the rehabilitative aspect of prison. If he doesn't rehabilitate, then let him rot in prison. They've already spent too much time out of prison. Hit the like button, like, comment, and share. Much love to you.